Now to a large recall from General Motors. It involves 600,000 vehicles whose V8 engines can fail without warning.
For 2 years, nearly 600,000 engines were dying without warning, and the smartest people in the industry could not tell you why. They issued a recall, they swapped in brand new engines, and those died too. 36 of them, right after the so-called fix.
Auto experts tell KDK investigates the fires are the result of poor engine design. And the Center for Auto Safety says since these vehicles remain popular, people need to know how to keep them in working order.
Picture the panic in those rooms, the engineers chasing a killer they could not see, the regulators realizing the cure was failing in real time. Then someone finally found it. And it was not a flaw they could simply repair. It was something built into the way every modern engine is made, and it is far worse than anyone feared. A large recall. Picture it, a Chevy Silverado seizes solid on Interstate 95 while towing a loaded trailer. A Toyota Tundra grenades its twin-turbo V6 in a parking lot. A Honda V6 locks up on the highway with the family inside. A Hyundai Sonata bursts into flames on the morning school run. 4 different brands, 4 different engines, the exact same nightmare. For a while, the official story was clean and simple. General Motors pulled back roughly 600,000 vehicles whose V8 engines could fail without warning. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration pointed to manufacturing defects in the engine's internal components. The recall covered certain Cadillac, Chevrolet, and GMC models, and on paper, it looked like one company's contained problem. But here's the catch. Engineers at competing automakers were quietly chasing the exact same ghost inside their own engines. They could not explain it either. They were watching their best machines die for no reason they could name, and they were too afraid to say it out loud. So, what were they all secretly hunting? Roadside nightmares. The reports started flooding in by late 2023. Owners of 2021 through 2024, Silverado 1500s, Sierra 1500s, Tahoes, Yukons, and Escalades all describe the same chilling sequence. First, a faint bearing knock, then a ticking sound on cold starts, then a whiff of burnt oil drifting through the cabin, and then, sometimes within days, the engine locked solid and the vehicle simply stopped. Here is the part that stunned everyone. Many of these trucks had fewer than 30,000 miles on the odometer. Some had less than 5,000. These were near-new vehicles families had just financed, in some cases for more than $80,000 for a loaded Escalade. People were making their first few payments while the engine was already dead in the driveway. Think about what that does to a person. A contractor in Texas loses his work truck on the way to a job site, and with it, the week's pay. He had bought the thing precisely because it was supposed to be bulletproof, the workhorse that never lets you down. A retiree in Ohio watches smoke curl from under the hood of the SUV he bought for road trips with his grandkids. A vehicle with barely a few thousand miles on it. A nurse coasting home after a night shift, exhausted, drifts onto the shoulder with no power, no warning light, and no idea what just happened. Different lives, different states, the same dead engine, and the same gut punch realization that the machine they trusted was lying to them from the very first mile. By April of 2025, General Motors made it official. 597,571 vehicles recalled. The L876.2-liter V8, one of the most popular truck engines in America, became the most talked about engine in the country overnight. Not the way GM wanted. Tow trucks worked overtime, hauling dead V8s into service bays already backed up for weeks. And then came the detail that changed everything. The fix that failed. The recall remedy rolled out. The failures did not stop. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration logged at least 36 new failure complaints from owners whose engines had already received the official fix. Some had received brand new replacement engines. Those failed too. The cure was not curing anything. That is the moment our investigator is sitting with. In early 2026, the agency opened a fresh investigation, codenamed RQ26-001, and the question shifted underneath everyone's feet. It was no longer just what killed these engines, it was whether anyone on Earth actually knew how to stop it. Because a recall is supposed to be the end of a problem. You find the flaw, you fix it, the danger goes away. But when factory-fresh engines keep dying after the fix, it means the fix is aimed at the symptom, not the disease. It means whatever is wrong is buried somewhere they cannot reach. And it means every owner who got the official remedy and breathed a sigh of relief might be driving a time bomb that was never actually diffused. And while regulators dug into GM, the same thing was quietly jumping the fence into other brands. If you have ever wondered whether your own vehicle is hiding this exact flaw, stay with me, because what comes next touches almost every modern engine on the road. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. Now, back to the story. It crossed every brand. Toyota recalled around 127,000 Tundras and Lexus LX 600s, built around the V35A twin-turbo V6. Same catastrophic damage, same bearing knock leading to total seizure. The engine powering Toyota's flagship pickup and its six-figure luxury SUV was suffering the identical death. Then Honda. The automaker quietly acknowledged V6 engines spinning bearings under 60,000 miles in Pilot, Passport, Acura MDX, and Odyssey models. Some owners sued, claiming Honda knew and dragged its feet. Then Hyundai and Kia, already scarred by a decade of engine recalls, took another massive hit. Around 3 million vehicles tangled in recalls over debris contamination, faulty connecting rod bolts, and piston ring problems. The estimated bill north of $5 billion. Now sit with what that actually means. These companies do not share factories. They do not share suppliers. They do not share engineers. They are fierce rivals who guard their designs like state secrets. And they all arrived at the same failure at the same moment. That is not one company's mistake. That is a fingerprint. And it pointed at something the whole industry had done together, with the same confidence and the same blind spot. So, what were they all missing? Tiny specks crushing power. To see it, you have to look inside a modern engine. It is a different world from your grandfather's V8. Bearings now ride on films of oil thinner than a human hair. Clearances are measured in microns, 1/1000th of a millimeter. Connecting rods are forged so precisely that a fingerprint left on a surface can throw them off. Even the oil changed. Most new engines run 0W15 or 0W20. Oils so thin they pour almost like water next to the thick syrups of decades past. Here is the deal. Thinner oil and tighter clearances both serve one master: fuel economy. Federal rules keep pushing automakers to squeeze out more miles per gallon. Thin oil cuts friction. Tight tolerances cut waste. Small turbos replace the big lazy V8S. On paper, it is beautiful. Now the physics. That oil film thinner than a hair is the only thing keeping two pieces of spinning metal from grinding each other to powder. As long as the film holds, the metal floats and never touches. But the gap is so small there is almost nothing to spare. An older engine had wider clearances and thicker oil, so it had room to breathe. A little wear, a little heat, a little grit, and it shrugged it off. Today there is no room to shrug. And here is what makes it so cruel. The very thing that makes these engines efficient is the thing that makes them fragile. Mechanics across the country kept noticing it. The old iron from the 1990s took a savage beating and kept running for 250,000 miles. These new ones, packed with technology and tuned to the razor's edge for fuel economy, were dropping like flies with barely any miles on them. We did not build worse engines. We built engines so good, so precise, so tightly wound, that we left them no defense against a single grain of dirt. And that is the trap nobody saw closing. The ghost gets a name. Here is what the engineers finally cornered. When you build an engine this tight, anything left behind during manufacturing becomes a weapon. A single fleck of metal shaving, called swarf, that would have washed harmlessly through a 1995 small block can wedge into a modern bearing and tear the whole engine apart in seconds. It does not need to be big. It only needs to be bigger than the oil film it is trying to pass. When a fragment of hardened steel is larger than that microscopic gap, it does not flow past. It digs in. It plows a groove. And from that single point, the destruction spreads like a crack racing across a windshield. And remember, this is all happening at thousands of revolutions per minute. The crankshaft is not turning gently. It is spinning hundreds of times every second, dragging that gouge-bearing surface against itself with enormous force, generating heat faster than the thin oil can carry it away. Once the scoring starts, it feeds itself. More damage means more friction means more heat. More heat means the oil film collapses entirely. From the moment that particle bites, the engine is on a countdown, it cannot survive. This was the answer hiding in plain sight. A speck of metal smaller than a grain of sand, bringing the most advanced engines on the planet to a dead stop. And the numbers back it up in a way that should chill you. Industry studies estimate around 82% of all mechanical engine wear traces back to particulate contamination. For every 10 engines that die before their time, more than 8 are killed by dirt, debris, or microscopic metal that should never have been inside them. Sit with that. We picture engine failure as something violent and obvious. A blown gasket, a snapped belt, a sudden betrayal you can hear. But the data tells a quieter, darker story. Most engines are not killed in one dramatic moment. They are murdered slowly, scratch by invisible scratch, until the day one critical surface finally gives way. By then the engine has been dying for a long time, and nobody knew. But that just raises the worst question. How did the metal get in there in the first place? Where the debris comes from. It starts on the factory floor. Crankshafts and connecting rods are machined from forged steel. Every pass of the cutting tool peels away metal, and that metal has to go somewhere. Most of it gets captured, blown out, washed away, inspected. But the oil galleries, the narrow internal passages that feed oil to the bearings, are long, sometimes drilled at angles, and a stubborn fragment can hide in a corner the cleaning fluid never reaches. On one engine, inspection catches it. Across millions of engines a year, the law of large numbers takes over. Even a tiny failure rate produces thousands of poisoned engines. When General Motors traced its L87 failures to the source, the trail led straight to the supplier handling crankshaft and connecting rod machining during specific build windows in 2023 and early 2024. Microscopic debris had survived the cleaning process and settled inside the oil galleries. The first time the engine fired, that debris started circulating. It scored the bearings. It scratched the crankshaft journals. Then, a rod bearing seized, the rod snapped, and the block split open from the inside. Toyota found almost exactly the same thing in the V35A. Machining debris and out-of-spec surface finishes on components built in specific months between 2022 and 2024. So, the real horror was not that one factory slipped. It was that this could be hiding in any of them, in any engine that rolled off any line during those windows, including one you might be driving right now. And the danger was about to get a lot more personal than a repair bill. The safety cost. The threat here goes far past money and lost time. Picture pulling a horse trailer up a mountain pass when the engine locks solid. Picture merging onto a busy interstate at full throttle when a rod lets go. Picture driving your kids home from school when the dash goes dark and the wheels stop pulling power. These are not theoretical. They are exactly what owners of recalled vehicles have lived. Sudden loss of propulsion at highway speed is one of the most dangerous failures a vehicle can suffer. When the engine dies, you lose vacuum-assisted brakes after 1 or 2 pumps of the pedal. You lose power steering and the wheel feels set in concrete. You lose acceleration, so you cannot escape the traffic closing in behind you. On a downhill grade with a trailer pushing from behind, the rig can outrun a driver's ability to stop it. And the cruelest part is the timing. An engine does not wait for a convenient moment. It does not wait until you are parked in the driveway. It fails when it fails. Maybe in the middle of a 4-lane merge, maybe halfway across a long bridge, maybe on a rain-slicked grade with semis bearing down behind you. You get seconds, sometimes less. And the people who lived through it describe the same helpless instant, the moment the pedal goes hard underfoot and the wheel turns to stone in their hands, the moment they realize the machine has quit and there is nothing left to do but steer toward the shoulder and pray. This is why the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration takes RQ 26-001 so seriously. The investigation is digging into whether GM's remedy actually works. The official fix drains the factory oil, flushes the system, and refills with a higher viscosity oil to cushion damaged bearings. Engines showing wear during inspection get full replacements. But here is the rub. Thicker oil is a bandage, not a cure. It buys time on engines that already have minor wear. It cannot undamage a bearing that has already been scored. And if debris is still buried deep in an oil gallery, no oil change on Earth can wash that risk away, which means the question still hanging over every owner is the one nobody wants to ask. The mounting toll. The bill keeps climbing. General Motors set aside billions in warranty reserves. Toyota's recall added hundreds of millions more. Hyundai and Kia's tab tops $5 billion. Dealerships eat repair backlogs and angry customers. Insurance companies quietly flag certain model years as high risk and adjust premiums. Resale values on affected trucks and SUVs drop hard. The labor alone is brutal. A full L87 replacement runs as high as 18 hours of front-end disassembly, more than 2 full working days per truck, times hundreds of thousands of trucks. Fleet operators got hit hardest. Construction crews, delivery services, and rental fleets running dozens or hundreds of affected trucks faced pulling them off the road for weeks. Some sued for lost revenue. Others switched brands and never looked back. And consumer trust, once it cracks, is almost impossible to glue back. Trucks like the Silverado and Tundra are not just transportation. They are the tools working families depend on every single day. The difference between making payroll and missing it, between getting the kids to school and being stranded on the shoulder. Lifelong brand loyalists, people who had driven nothing but one badge for 30 years, started shopping around for the first time in decades. When a brand breaks that kind of faith, it does not come back with a coupon and an apology. That was the moment the industry stopped treating this as a quality hiccup and started treating it as survival. Fixing the root cause. After June of 2024, General Motors quietly rolled out manufacturing changes targeting the L87's machining process. Cleaning protocols got more aggressive. Crankshafts and rods now pass through extra flushing stages built to dislodge debris from the oil galleries. Visual and ultrasonic inspections were added to catch contamination before assembly. Supplier quality gates tightened. Toyota matched the move, enhancing inspection of V35A internals, including surface finish checks on bearings and journals. Honda, Hyundai, and Kia leaned into automated optical inspection, where high-resolution cameras and computer vision scan every machine surface for debris, roughness, or geometric error. Fail the scan, get re-cleaned or scrapped. And here's the part that tells you how scared they really are. Some factories are now sealing off engine assembly lines from the rest of the plant. Air filtration upgraded, workers in lint-free clothing, every tool tracked so no chip or fragment gets left behind. A modern engine plant is starting to look less like a factory and more like a semiconductor fab. That comparison is not a flourish. Chip plants obsess over a single speck of dust because it can ruin a microchip. Engines never needed that because they were built with margin to spare. What this crisis exposed is that modern engines crossed into chip territory without anyone deciding to build them that way. The tolerances tightened year after year. The factories never caught up. The engines outran the plants that built them. And that gap is exactly where every one of these failures was born. The frightening part is that the engines already on the road were built before any of this changed. The decade-long warning. So you might be wondering, did all of this really happen overnight? Are we missing something? We are not. This did not fall out of the sky. It built up over a decade of tiny steps nobody noticed until engines started dying in the wild. Every new vehicle now lives caught between two opposing forces. Emissions and fuel economy rules push engineers to wring every drop of efficiency from the powertrain. At the same time, customers expect engines to last 200,000 miles without major repairs. With today's tiny turbos spinning faster, running hotter, and tolerating less debris than ever, the margin for error has nearly vanished. The engineers cracked the code on what was killing these engines. But the bigger fight is just starting, and it is being fought on factory floors right now. So here's the real question. Would you trust a brand new turbocharged engine today, or stick with a proven older design? Drop your answer in the comments, smash that like button, and subscribe for more.